Nothing is more important to the success of a startup than the first 10 engineers you hire. That's why I started First 10. Hi, I'm Boris Epstein, CEO of First 10, and with me is my colleague,
Alexis Munger. Hi. At First 10, we work with early founders to help build early engineering teams.
And this is the First 10 podcast, where we bring you valuable insights on building early engineering teams from all sides of the equation. Engineers, founders, even investors. On today's episode of the First 10 podcast, we're talking about recent trends in hiring.
I think it's good to understand why things are coming about and what's going on in tech currently, just to kind of understand the culture and why it is the way it is.
I agree. And everyone's in their own little bubble, and every little bubble has a lot of value and insight to it.
Yeah.
And I thought it'd be a good idea to talk about some of the trends that we're seeing so that people that are a part of them could either feel like they're being validated.
Yeah.
Or if they're, feeling or seeing something different, then that's also cool too. They could kind of get a sense of maybe what others are doing, and then maybe what they're doing is differentiated or standout or, unique, or if it's working, then that's great. But trends are always good to stay on top of. Especially
since recruiting can be kind of a little bit of a silo and you don't know if it's just you or if it's real.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we're here to bring you the trends.
I think too, trends that have been coming up out of the last 3 years in tech and kind of what we've seen, where 2021 was this post-pandemic thing where everybody was going hiring crazy, or actually 2020. And then things kind of started to go through the skids once everybody overhired way too aggressively. Interest rates went up, people started getting laid off, and now we're kind of coming out of that. So how is that impacting what we're seeing in hiring? How is that being, reflected?
Yeah.
How has hiring changed since all of that? I think it's interesting. I don't know. What's the first thing that you would think of is coming out of all of this?
Yeah, I'll share on that. And to your point, there's a definite state change. It's almost the last decade was all hyper growth. Then there was a couple big kabooms with COVID and tech downturn and layoffs and all that. And now we're coming out of it. So I think in the macro, I think that's where we are right now in tech.
Yeah.
First big trend, not a shocker, starting off pretty straightforward. And First 10 recruits for super early stage. So we're recruiting for early startups, only. But everything is AI.
Yeah.
Not a shocker. I'm sure everyone expected to hear this, but literally every single startup that we're recruiting for, or every single startup that we get a connection to, is doing something related to AI. Now, there's a little bit of a spectrum across those types of startups. There's a lot of infrastructure being rebuilt to support the new way of AI development. There are AI native apps and AI native technologies that are being built from an AI first perspective to address every single industry and function in the world.
Yeah.
Then there are companies that are not AI, but that are infusing AI into them in some shape or form to create some sort of efficiency or to add some sort of a value to what they're building. Those are the three types of AI that we're seeing. I
think at least the last two BD calls that I've been on have been some sort of dev tool focused on the AI stack and how to improve developer efficiency with that.
Yeah.
But from different angles and different sides of it. And I'm sure there's going to be there already probably is, but a huge boon of dev tools that are AI focused that are coming out of this that are going to make life that much easier and faster to develop code.
Yeah. And the same thing happened, right? I mean, when the internet first came out, infrastructure was replumbed. When mobile came out, infrastructure was replumbed. When data got massive with social, the infrastructure got replumbed. AI is coming out, infrastructure is getting replumbed. So par for course, a lot of opportunity.
You know what's strange? We don't really get that many requests for hiring for mobile anymore. And it used to be the biggest, most popular thing. And it's not like people haven't stopped making apps. I mean, I probably do 90% of what I do on a computer is done on my phone right now.
Yeah.
But I wonder why that is. I wonder why that specialty is not I don't see it as much. I don't think I've been asked to do mobile in years.
Yeah, I don't see it much either. And too bad for the popular iPhone and Android developers, which were in very hot demand, but not seeing a lot of demand for them. Maybe teams are already stacked up on that skill set. But there is definite interest in building on or at least exploring new computing platforms and paradigms. Wearables is popular. A couple big wearables came out in the AI space. That's a very mixed interest. The Vision Pro, Meta with a Quest. Lot of big companies are building and competing in the space, and a lot of early startups are competing and excited to compete.
Yeah.
AI is definitely very popular right now. It feels like it's the mid-90s when the internet first came out. It'll probably become ubiquitous over time, and companies will chill out a little bit on the AI hype. A lot of herd mentality in Silicon Valley, a lot of herd mentality in the startup world. I don't think AI is going to go away, but it'll probably become ubiquitous. Probably the same way that mobile has become, ubiquitous. It's kind of just found itself as a mainstay in the ecosystem. AI will likely as well. We're seeing some new majors kind of pop up in OpenAI, Anthropic, and others, and they'll probably continue to grow and develop, and new startups will kind of pop into space. But it'll level itself out likely.
Yeah. So I think on that note, kind of something that I'm seeing that goes, I think, along with that is full stack roles. That's becoming fuller. Look, that's a weird way to put it, but I think now what I'm seeing is there's a lot of early stage companies that are wanting a full stack engineer, but that full stack engineer needs to know a little bit about LLMs and incorporating LLMs. So it's now not just like what you would traditionally think of as with full stack. It's those things added to it. And at first, when I heard that, I thought that's crazy. I don't know that there's that many full stack engineers that have that also added specialty to it. But I think now it makes sense because this isn't going to be like it's probably not going to be a specialty anymore. It's going to be a mainstay. So if you're a full stack generalist, that's going to be part of your swim lane to be involved in AI and LLMs.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy to hear. It makes sense, right? Because it is part of the common stack now. But it's crazy to talk to a company and, with a super straight face, have them ask for all of this experience, right?
Yeah.
They want the full stack. They want to be able to touch the front end. They want to be able to touch the back end. They want to be able to set it up for scale. Oh, and let's make sure that they can help with, integrating the LLMs. And if they could dabble with ML, that'd be great too. And so you're literally kind of bunching 4 or 5 legit professions into one job.
Yeah. I don't know how I feel about it, to be totally honest. Like, it's not what I'm used to, but maybe it's something that is going to become more of a thing and I should get used to it. But it does seem like that's a lot of things to sort of have an understanding of as an engineer, just different specialties all kind of rolling into one right now.
And I think, we're obviously biased because we recruit for early startups, right? And early startups, they don't get the benefit of
having a team of
having like the machine learning team and then having the front end team and the mobile team. They kind of need everyone to do a little bit of everything. So if there is a place where you're going to get stretched, or another way to look at it, if there's a place where you're going to get exposure to all these different parts of the stack, like startups is where that's going to happen. They'll probably, as they grow, look to bring in specialization in some of these areas.
Yeah.
But if you identify with being full stack, if you identify with and you want your stack to kind of become even fuller.
Yeah.
Or if you want that breadth, you want that exposure, then early startups are definitely stretching that right now.
Yeah. But what better way to get that depth by going to an early stage startup? Because if I would imagine, if you're at a larger company and maybe you do go to a different team and try and get your feet wet in that, you're going to see like from a different perspective where you're only going to own like one small thing at a time. Whereas if you go to early stage and you want to learn all these things, you're going to be a much more well-rounded full stack generalist, the new full stack generalist, and what we're seeing, what that's becoming. I think that's absolutely true. And with AI, you could build a fully functioning AI app with like full stack engineering talent. You could almost build a full stack AI app without kind of full stack engineering talent, right? With all the kind of AI tools, AI coding tools, and support technology and co-pilots that exist right there. Yeah.
And early startups are definitely taking advantage of that, like building more with less. I think that kind of speaks to the kind of fuller stack nature. At larger companies, you're not going to get that, right? At larger companies, the ML scientists are different than the ML engineers. The ML engineers are different than the ML ops engineers. The ML ops engineers are different than the kind of, infrastructure engineers are different than the full stack. I mean, your specialization really thins at the larger company.
It's a very narrow scope, yeah. But get a broader scope at an early stage company. Do it. It's fun.
Definite trend. And look, maybe larger companies will start to pick up on that too.
Yeah.
If they want kind of, less handing off and more full cycle ownership of development, we might see that pick up at the big company as well.
What else do you see?
Well, how better to evaluate, right, for this full stack talent than to change up your interview process.
Yeah.
So the way of the last decade was all about LeetCode, bringing talent in, running them through very kind of generic interview processes to test for fundamental abilities, maybe some domain expertise, and then bringing them in and then putting them into the respective job. We're seeing a trend move away from LeetCode right now.
Yeah.
Startups see LeetCode interviewing as generic and less applicable to the work that they're actually doing. Talent sees LeetCode interviews as mundane, not representative of their actual capabilities.
Yep.
And so what we're seeing startups doing is shift to more either take home or project style interviews or work trials, or work trials are paid. But the startups want to kind of really get to know the kind of full extent of what a person can do as it applies to the work that they need done. So they're literally taking slices of projects that they're working on right now, or kind of simulating projects that they would be working on right now. And that's becoming the interview process. So that way the engineers that they evaluate, there's two benefits, right? The engineer gets to, kind of taste test the types of projects that they would be working on to see if they like it, to see if their passion really ignites, to see if they're, if they thrive on that sort of work, get excited by it and do well with it.
Yep.
And then the startup gets to know how the person would actually do in the type of work that they need done. So definite trend towards that. And it seems like talent is appreciating that.
Yeah.
Startups are definitely appreciating that. A little bit tougher to prepare for because you can't kind of just go and run through a bunch of data structure examples.
Yeah.
But it is like a more true testament to evaluating fit and evaluating interest.
Yeah. I used to really be not in favor of take homes only because I viewed them as an exercise that you would send to a passive candidate and you would never see it come back.
Right.
It used to be that way. And I think it's because people were very just used to getting on the phone, doing a 1 hour technical assessment, you passed or failed. And that was it. It was just like less friction in the process. But now I think I'm pro take home because
you heard it here first.
I'm pro take home.
You heard it here first.
Because I think I've probably seen a fair amount of solid engineers got passed on because they just sucked at LeetCode, but it probably had no bearing on how they did as an engineer in like a professional setting. Because that's not what you're doing day to day.
And they would all complain about that too. Yeah. They're like, why do I have to solve this problem in 30 minutes without resources when in real life, I just would never do that.
No. I think any good engineer out there shouldn't just spin their wheels for 30 minutes. Like you would go and be resourceful and figure it out. And it would, take you a little bit, but I think it's not an accurate representation of somebody's abilities. And I also think for somebody who's like, not everybody's great at interviewing, doesn't mean they're bad at their job. And I think a take home gives that person some time to think and process and not have an interviewer staring at them, under a time crunch. You think easier, you're much more relaxed in that setting. You're at home, you can do this thing. And then you're also working on this project that you're like, oh, if this is fun for me, imagine how fun it would be if I actually worked here.
Yeah. I like both sides of it. In my world, an ideal interview process would have a little bit of both. I like the LeetCode because there is some rigor to it. There is some standardization to it. There's something fundamental that's being kind of evaluated for. So I do like those aspects of it. And then I also really like the taste test experience that both the startup and the engineer gets through the work trials. And look, this isn't like something the whole industry's like set on, right? Remember, we had a guest on who talked about like eliminate all of your take homes because nobody good is doing take homes because they don't have time.
Yeah,
I don't necessarily think that's true.
I don't think so.
I don't think that's true. I mean, we definitely see people doing take homes, but I do think an ideal experience would be we have a startup and they send the assignment the night before.
Yeah.
Then the person comes in, spends 3 hours in the office in an on-site simulated format doing the work. After that, they meet with the team, they talk about it, they go out to lunch. So it's not a take-home where you're sitting at home doing it. The work assignment is simulated as part of the on-site experience. I kind of like that as a best of both worlds.
I think it's also another thing that's going to take time getting used to, but it will benefit both parties because you're not just being assessed on your code, you're being assessed on how you can collaborate with people. And especially in an early stage, that's so important. You can't have big egos. You can't have somebody who just wants to sit in a silo and code and not interact with anybody. You have to work together. That's the huge part of being in an early stage.
Facts.
I think it gives people a two-way street to say like, hey, can I collaborate with these people on a day-to-day basis? Am I going to enjoy that? Is it fun to work with y'all or no?
Yeah.
And that's from the candidate's perspective and the company's perspective.
Yeah.
You got to make sure it works.
And we kind of glossed over this, but work trials are definitely a thing.
Yeah.
So a work trial, just to define it for our audience, is after the interview process or like towards the end of the interview process, the company says, we would like to invite you, engineer, in to come work with us for a period of time. We have a startup that invites them in for 2 days. We have a startup that does it for a week. We have a startup that has someone on a 4-week work trial right now. Now, 4-week, that can almost be considered like a contract to hire.
Yeah.
And that's not uncommon, right? You start someone on a contract, a month, 3 months, get to know them. And if things work well, then you convert them. A 2-day work trial, I think, is probably gonna, rebalance as the more standard.
Yeah.
It's very simulated. It's paid for. So the time is accounted for. And both the engineer and the founders get to work together for, in this case, a 2-day period of time to mutually get to know each other, to mutually kind of try this out before committing to something full time.
Yeah.
It sounds like a lot compared to the kind of rinse and repeat interview hiring that has been done for the last decade.
Yeah.
But when you think about it from a very practical perspective, right, committing to a job on a full-time basis is a pretty big commitment.
Yeah.
If there's an opportunity to get to know the team for a 2-day period before you commit to the full time, that's nice. And if the startup can get to know you for a 2-day period before investing, weeks, months into training, into developing, into seeing if this makes, longer term sense, then I think that's great. It's paid for. Usually startups are flexible around the timing of it. We know the startup that we work with, they have people come in the afternoons through the evening so they could still balance their workday if they need to, or if they need to take a day or two off, they can kind of split the 2 days. So there's some flexibility around it, but it is a definite trend that we're seeing.
I like that. So far, everybody has emphasized that it is paid. And actually, I've heard this before, from some candidates that are like, this is a lot of work for an interview and am I getting compensated for it? I've heard that before when giving certain take-homes, and typically they don't end up being culture fits anyway. But I think this is a good way to get paid for your time interviewing if you're investing that much time into the interview process. Because sometimes I think in the past, you've had companies with 8 to 10 hours worth of interviews. And then
it can be brutal.
And then you don't even get an offer. And then you spent all the, I don't know. It's just, I think a paid work trial is kind of nice, actually.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, so sometimes you don't get offers. Sometimes you don't even get a call back, right? Sometimes you get ghosted. I mean, companies could be pretty brutal with their candidate experience and hygiene, whole different topic.
But I would feel less salty about it if I was compensated for my time.
I agree.
Yeah. I think it's cool. I'm coming around to that idea too. It took me some time to sort of make peace with it, but I think that there is some good to doing a work trial for everyone. Yeah. Okay. Next trend. Have we talked at all about the office and whether or not people want to go back to it, not go back to it?
It's happening.
I don't know I know what I'm seeing with companies. It's definitely leaning way more towards in-person and hybrid, especially in SF and New York. That's a thing. People want to go back to the office. At least companies do.
Yeah, companies.
Do you think engineers do?
I see both.
Yeah.
I see plenty of engineers that prefer remote. Probably hybrid is the stronger preference. I also see engineers who had been working in a remote environment really crave in person and appreciate that a startup has an office and has some in-person connection. I think hybrid will probably end up being where things balance out to, right? We have startups that are 5 days in the office. That feels like a lot, right? We have a startup 5 days in the office in San Francisco.
Yeah.
that means that the good engineers from the peninsula, from Mountain View, from Palo Alto, they're probably going to squeam a little bit around coming in for 5 days a week. They would do it for 3, but the 5 is going to feel like a lot. Well, we have other startups that are doing 4 days in the office. 3 is a really nice balance because then you could take advantage of a little bit of a broader commute radius.
Yeah.
Whatever any startup does is fine when they're small. I mean, if you're a small startup, you have 2 founders, you need to hire up through 10. There's enough people wherever you're located to build that team.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry too much about size of market. But, as you get bigger, you're going to have to flex up if you want the talent, or you're just going to have to open up multiple offices, right? The SF team will have to open up an office in Palo Alto if they want to take advantage of that talent, or Seattle or New York or wherever it is.
Yeah.
They want to continue.
Seems kind of expensive. I would say if I was a founder early stage, I would do hybrid. And then that way you could kind of go after the people in the peninsula without having to open up and expand an extra office for just a couple of people. I mean, that seems crazy.
For just the extra 2 days per week.
For just an extra 2 days a week.
I agree with you from a practical perspective. It kind of depends on what you're going for. I'm kind of picturing I'm picturing the 5-day in the office work week, right? Like, remember back in the day, like when we would recruit, you spent a lot of time at Airbnb. That was really known for its in-office culture. Yeah. My guess is that it was 5 days a week in the office. Maybe it got a little softer on Fridays, but you knew when you showed up to work, your office was buzzing, right? Every day.
Yeah.
I think you have a higher likelihood of that when it's 5 days. If you're 3 days in the office, different people are probably picking different days.
Yeah.
And then you have the time flexibility. I've heard that some offices, while people are sitting there together, are struggling with the buzz, with the vibe. It's kind of like super mid vibes.
Oh, interesting.
Because picture that, right?
Yeah.
Picture like a 10-person team or a 5-person team, like a small team, and 3 days a week in the office. Like, which days is everyone there?
Oh, yeah. You have to have a schedule.
If one person's not there, the 20%'s gone.
Yeah.
Someone leaves a little early, someone comes a little late. You kind of want the in-office buzz. You want it loud. If you're engineers, you don't want it loud, but you want a buzz, right? And so how do you kind of manufacture the buzz in the office?
You have to have a cool office. I mean, I know that's how Airbnb did it. Their offices are amazing. Like, you don't have to leave the building if you don't want to. There's plenty of delicious food, healthy food, great snacks, wonderful environment. There's people. I mean, it was great. It was fun going there. Like, I remember, vividly that. And I think it's probably hard to generate that. It's expensive to generate the buzz. The office is expensive.
It's expensive. Yeah. But it does seem like, I think the trend is that we are present day seeing a throwback to the way it used to be before COVID, right? One of our clients used that reference, and we had to confirm, right? Because he was even including the snacks and the time bars and the bevies and all the fun stuff. But there's a throwback to the way tech used to be, and the startup community seems to be excited about that. And
I mean, it makes sense. Like, we've all been hunkering down in our houses and not a lot of physical connection, for so long that I'm sure, I think people crave it. Even I do. And I've been always like a strong advocate for remote work, mostly because of where I live. I'm based in Arizona. So without remote, I would
love Arizona.
We've got to love Arizona.
Living the Tucson dream.
But even I would love to go into an office and just kind of get away from like home for a bit, see people I'm working with.
It's a big deal.
Be removed from that setting and be in a different one. If I could find that opportunity, I would be excited for something hybrid.
Yeah. First 10 Tucson?
First 10 Tucson.
First 10 Tucson. You heard it here first. Okay. Moving on to the next trend that we're seeing. And what we're saying here is what we're not seeing in early startup hiring is an emphasis on diversity.
Yeah.
Now, this is contrasted with what we experienced in hiring emphasis over the last decade, heavy emphasis on diversity. Yeah. Founders, hiring leaders wanted to build diversity into their team. And then there was an emphasis on diversity recruiting strategies to identify and attract diverse talent. And then that was supposed to convert over to the kind of diversification of team. In early stage, with the startups that we're in touch with, we see little to no emphasis on building diversity into the team. Founders are talking about wanting to hire the best possible talent. They're focused on the skills needed to be successful in the role, and they're evaluating the talent as it comes through.
Yep.
On two occasions, I've specifically been asked to focus on gender diversification. So this is a team of like all dudes that wanted to diversify their team and because, the product they're building or the culture that they want to build towards needs to have broader diversity, and they kind of got a little far on the building of their team without
thinking about that
gender balance. Without thinking about that. And what's crazy is, so when we focus on building pipeline and with no emphasis at all on diversity, looking at our pipelines, looking at the diversity of our pipelines, it's primarily skewed, not gender diverse, I guess is probably like the best way to put it.
Yeah.
And then when focusing on identifying women that are either interested in early stage or excited about early stage, one, way smaller number of women. And then two, the response rate is different as well.
Yeah.
And it's just really interesting to think about infusing diversity into sourcing strategies and into the building of a team at such an early stage.
I think kind of going back to what we were just talking about with the trends and whether or not you do in-person or hybrid, I feel like if you are an early stage founder and thinking about gender diversity early on is super, super important, especially for your product. If it's like a consumer product where it would not be great to just only have like one similar looking team, I guess.
Yeah.
You should think about remote work, I think, because I think that is also like another hurdle for for women who may be, in the stage of life where they're caring for family members. Even age diversity too, I think could also help with that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who are like now in the time of their life, especially if you're like maybe staff level engineer and above, getting around my age, people are taking care of aging parents, they're taking care of kids, there's just a lot of reasons why like coming into an office 5 days a week is hard. It's hard to balance. So if it's something that's important to you, I think it's a thing to consider about like whether or not you're creating an atmosphere where like you can go after a diverse set of talent that may not be able to commit to 5 days in an office.
Yeah. So I think the trend is that we just see, again, very little emphasis on diversity at the early stage. Our guess is that as these startups get later stage, it's going to hit them like a ton of bricks.
Yep.
And then the longer you wait to invest in the diversifying of your team, the more effort it's going to take at the later stages.
Yeah.
Because diverse talent that you bring into the funnel is going to see your lack of diversity on your team.
Yeah.
And that's going to be harder to see join. So the earlier you could build that emphasis into your startup, the more dividends it will pay down the road.
Yeah.
But again, from a trend perspective, we just see very little emphasis on it right now.
Agreed. Next thing that I'm seeing, and this is a good one, I think.
I think it's a great one.
Layoffs seem to have slowed, finally. Like I think it used to be, I would jump on LinkedIn and there was yet another layoff list going around to kind of peruse and see if you could try and get some talent that way. But I'm seeing fewer layoff lists, which is a great thing for tech in general. But it seems like that's kind of having like an impact too on like our passive sourcing outreach rates. Like we're seeing, I think people have kind of gotten over their fear of like being laid off, and like anybody that's kind of survived the waves of layoffs at like some of these bigger companies, I'm not seeing those response rates from those companies as being as strong as it used to be. It feels like people are kind of like, no, I'm good here. I feel safe. I can stay at this company. I'm not trying to switch as much.
Yeah, I think we're just seeing less of it right now. They're right. There used to be founders would say things like, aren't there a lot of layoffs going on? Isn't great talent a little bit easier to pull because of all the layoffs that are going on right now? We would hear that all the time. And
yeah,
I think it's understood, at least like right now in today's day, that that's not the case. It wasn't even really the case back then.
No.
But it is definitely not the case right now. There isn't like, a supply of great people that just got laid off that are trying to work for your startup. That isn't happening right now. So that means, competition has gone up.
It has gone up so much. Yes. I think that is like the definite trend I'm seeing is that it's not what it was like a year ago. It's coming back.
Yeah.
And I think that means probably means founders are going to have to adjust the way they think about attracting talent a little bit. You might have to work a little bit harder for it.
You might have to work a little bit.
Yeah.
Whole new trend, right? But speed is a factor. Startups are going to have to hustle more, right? We have startups that like respond to talent like immediately and then hustle them through the interview process. Then we have startups that, are taking their sweet time, right? And then those are unfortunately going to have to learn the hard way of good people getting snagged up before they're able to make them through. Everyone will snap to it, right?
Yeah.
Competition is a way of doing that, but yeah, startups, like step your game up because competition is definitely stiffening.
Yeah. I think the other thing that I'm seeing too is sabbaticals are super popular right now.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Everybody got, lots of people got laid off. They got great severance packages, presumably.
Like 6 months.
Some didn't.
Like 3, yeah.
But a lot of people got like 6 months.
Yeah.
That's baller. Like that, I'm seeing so many people who are like, you know what? I'm going to take a year off. And I see this on LinkedIn. You can see people's profiles that are indicating that I'm on sabbatical right now. I will get back to you when I'm ready.
Yeah.
But I am seeing that a lot.
And a lot of people, we look at profiles all day long, right? One, we've seen a lot of people make recent job changes. So you see a lot of people that started jobs in 2024 and late 2023. So there's been a lot of job change and job movement. We're also seeing the opposite, right? Where people like ended employment mid 2023.
Yeah.
And they're kind of
nothing.
And nothing, right? And they're kind of just doing whatever they're doing. Maybe they're taking some time off, starting to look for something casually, then, increasing the casualness to some need.
Yeah.
But a lot of end dates in mid 23 or something like that. And then, we're already mid 24, right? So it's like a year later.
Yeah.
And that starts to glare and it starts to become something.
Yeah.
I don't know what's too long to be considered rusty, right? But like imagine an engineer that just, I'm running with an engineer right now that's co-founder of his own startup, codes every day, interviewing for new opportunities, could start next week, right? That person is like well-oiled.
Yeah.
I have another person who seems great, right? Stopped working in mid 2023 due to a layoff, took a little bit of time off, took a little bit of extra time off, care for some family, started a job search. By the time that person starts, that person will have had a gap of about 1 year. Yeah. Maybe it's like riding a bike. Maybe it might take a smidge of oiling, right? Maybe interviewing a bunch will kind of tune it up. But it's a thing.
I think I'm definitely as kind of re-examining the way I think about like career gaps due to that, because I think that there were so many people who just got crazy burnt out over the last couple of years and needed a break. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe somebody who has had a break is a good thing for their next employer, because this person's now like, I don't know, maybe they got laid off from a job that they'd had for like 5 years and felt really crappy about it and sad about it. Maybe they needed to go to have some time to process it and get all the like toxic thoughts out before they start a new job, and take some time for yourself to really think, what do I want? What am I passionate about? Yeah. I think also we're seeing a lot of people with these sabbaticals who aren't going back to full-time roles. They're like trying something out. I've seen a lot of people who are like popping up as stealth mode, building something new. A
lot of that.
Yeah.
A lot of managers going to individual contributing jobs. Yes. A lot of emphasis on building, right? Whole different kind of trend that we didn't necessarily touch on. And not necessarily saying that a sabbatical is a bad thing, right? No. But from the lens of the startup, at some point, if a startup has, two equal people to choose from, someone who is coming from one employment to the next versus someone who's, taking a year break. And we're using the year as an example. We don't know what necessarily is too long. I mean, if someone took a 2-year break, would that be considered too long? I'd probably like
2 years seems excessive. That seems long.
No judgment on what a person might have needed to do during that 2 years, but from the lens of being able to jump right in and be effective at a new job versus someone who didn't take that break. Yeah. 2 years feels long, but we're seeing it. Yeah. And so it is a definite trend. And on the flip side, right, startups could take advantage of going to maybe bring out of retirement good people, right? Or people who've been on sabbaticals and go, pull some people that are less active in the market, kind of re-inspire them about whatever it is that startup is building. Good opportunity for that to happen as well.
I would definitely recommend being a little bit more open-minded about the career gaps these days, only because there are so many. I think there's good people out there that just honestly needed a break. Yeah. And there's some people that might actually have a career gap for like legit reasons, and some don't. But I think it's worth at least a call to kind of understand their psyche right now and like what they went through and
agreed.
Why.
Yeah, and as recruiters, right, we're reaching out to these folks and we're trying to understand kind of what's happening, and we're opportunistic, right? So we're definitely introducing people and repping them for opportunities where there's motivation and interest and excitement.
For sure.
A lot of exciting trends. I mean, a lot of fun things happening in the world of hiring and in startups right now, right? Just kind of recap. So everything's AI. Full stack is becoming fuller. Makes sense with AI being and kind of infused and incorporated into the everyday tech stack. Interview styles are changing. Engineers begin to prepare accordingly. Definite trend towards in-person. Very little focus on diversity. And then layoffs have slowed. So the market does seem to be balancing itself out.
It's getting competitive.
It's getting competitive and it's a dynamic market. And so if you're building an early team, good to be aware of what's happening so you can set yourself up for success. And if you're evaluating new opportunities, considering a change, a lot of really exciting opportunities in the market right now. AI is being talked about as a kind of once a generational technological advent, similar to the advent of the internet. And if you're not involved in it in some shape or form, you're missing out. Definitely get involved. There's a lot of great ways to do it from your current employment seat or side projects, or obviously a ton of really exciting early startups. And so fun to chat it up out of this.
Yeah, that's good. I like it.
And there you have it. And that brings us to the end of this episode. Do let us know what you thought of our episode on our Twitter or LinkedIn. Look for the links in the show notes. Both Alexis and I are not professional podcasters, as I'm sure you could tell. We just love talking about early stage startups.
And if there's a recruiting related question you'd like answered, or you could use help with anything hiring related, jump on our website. It's www.first10.com. That's 1st10.com. And we'll do our best to get that answered for you.
Thank you so much for staying with us till the end. My name is Boris, and with me is
Alexis Munger.
And we'll see you next time on the First 10 Podcast.
Bye.